Good afternoon, everybody. How are we all feeling? Good. We're feeling great because we're competing with talent downstairs and you're all here, so we've done something right. Let me introduce this illustrious panel to everyone. Steve, CMO of Nomad Foods, purveyors of brilliant brands such as Bird's Eye. So we're into the frozen food space, very different. Tim is Brands and Insights Director for Standard Chartered, so we are representing the world of banking. And last but not least, Chris, who is Marketing Director UK of Jägermeister. And I don't think I need to explain what that is to anybody in the room. A superbly diverse, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, extremely experienced veterans of their categories. And I'm sure they're going to have a lot to say for themselves this afternoon. We actually had dinner last night. And one of the things I love about Advertising Week are just the creative encounters and the unusual ideas that come to pass in this conference. By the time we'd finished our meal, they decided that the thing that the world needed next was frozen chicken with, if you just took the Kiev bit out, the garlic butter bit out and put the Jägermeister in the middle, we'd all be delighted. And on that note, Chris has actually brought some Jägermeister to the stage. A round of applause for Chris. So I'm going to let us get started, but at some point you should vote whether you'd like us to down this shot and make things livelier or not. But let's get started first of all. So we're actually here to talk a little bit about tech. Of course, we're on the tech stage, but culture and how those things intersect. And it strikes me that culture, I think, feels maybe a little bit like it's under pressure. It's moving backwards in some ways, while tech is consistently on fast forward. And where do we as people meet all of that in the middle? How does it make us feel? Where can we really bring brilliant brands to bear in that context? And in that world of constraint and in that world of challenge and pressure, what do these senior marketeers have to do to get it right? Chris, I'll start with you. Jaeger is obviously a hugely cultural brand in its own right. What I'd love you to talk about is maybe how you've had to show up to that world differently to what you used to do. What's changed for you in that space?
Well, we could probably fill hours with answering that question. I'll try to keep it brief. I think what we see right now in what we call the on-trade, which is bars, clubs, restaurants, is a monumental change that we haven't seen in decades, probably. We see consumer trends shifting, so there is a difference, of people's response and attitude towards alcohol. We obviously have a huge impact from the cost of living crisis, so people have less money when they go out. The one thing that keeps us hoping and alive and kicking is that people still want to go out. So people actually do want to go out, and we have research that shows us that the last luxury the British population want to give up on is going out, going into the on-trade. But however, when they do, they spend less. So that obviously is a massive change. I think, I don't know who likes nightclubs. Anyone in this room? Yeah, you probably, see a few smiles. Great, it's a great time, but we've seen a massive change in that as well. We lost over 1/3 of British nightclubs in the last 3 years alone, which is really leaving a huge gap in British culture. However, what we do see is that this underlying desire to go out, to spend time with friends, to meet new people, that is still very, very valid. That is still very, very much alive, and that probably hasn't changed in the last 5,000 or 10,000 years. I mean, probably it was a little different back then. You were dancing around a fire and beating the drum. Some people still do that today. That's absolutely fine. But nightlife is changing, and that is sort of the environment where we operate as a brand.
I think one of the things that we've seen shift is, or at least we feel that it's shifting, are consumer attitudes in some places. Is it fair to say that we didn't know what the word incel meant 5 minutes ago, but now we've all watched Adolescence, so that we've got to that party? DEI, Tim, let me come to you on that. Is it dead?
No. I think it's interesting. We at Standard Chartered have actually restated our commitment to D&I. And it's simply because it's who we are. So we operate in 53 markets physically around the world. So we are diverse by nature. 33% of senior roles are held by women, which is up 8% since 2016. 42% of the board are women, and 33% of our board identify as coming from an ethnic minority background. We've just equalised parental leave for men and women, and anyone who is acquiring a child by any means all around the world. So wherever you are, if you work for Standard Chartered, you get a minimum of 20 weeks full pay, which is, I think, just symptomatic of our commitment to DEI. And our CEO has said that is why we're successful. That is why people connect with us, because they can see themselves represented in our workforce. So for us, it's very much not dead.
It's interesting to see that dynamic and that culture show up in so many positive spaces. Steve, I wanted to ask you about sustainability, because that's another big headline area where it feels like the mood music has changed a little bit, where maybe consumers are standing back from that, from where they were even a couple of years ago. Do you guys see a shift there? How does that show up in your world?
Well, first and foremost, working for a food business, sustainability is pretty fundamental, because when you're sourcing products from nature, so our two biggest segments that we operate in are vegetables and fish. So if you're not fishing from sustainable oceans where there's enough biomass for the fish to replenish, you won't have fish in the future. You don't have a business. And similarly on vegetables, if you're not growing your vegetables in a sustainable way that preserves the health of the soil, you won't have the same yield, they'll taste crap, and the cost will go up. So, there's a foundation there as a food business that we need to take it seriously. From a consumer point of view, it's more complex. Yep. So what we see across Europe is different attitudes, actually, slightly different attitudes. So there's more propensity to buy for sustainability in markets like Germany, a bit less so in the UK. What we see here is that people want something more from sustainability. So they expect brands to do the sustainability job for them. And what we're seeing emerging is this theme of sustainability plus. So yes, I'll buy something that's good for the planet if there's something in it for me. So there's definitely more cynicism. I think it's about 25% of consumers saying they don't really trust claims around sustainability. 17% of consumers think, well, my contribution won't make a difference. And where they are making a difference, where they're eating less meat, for example, it's not for sustainability, it's for health coming above that. So what brands need to consider and offer is what they offer on top of the sustainability claims. So good examples that we'll all be familiar with, refills. When you get refills for hand wash, yeah, you're saving packaging, but you're getting value. You're buying an ethical chocolate brand, well, you're getting a great chocolate like a Tony Chocolonely. The best example from us and Bird's Eye is actually our fish fingers. So hopefully some of you out there enjoy fish fingers. And in this country, we love our cod when it comes to fish fingers. But if you go back, I can see the smiles, I like that. I should have bought some, no, might have been a bit of smell there. So if you go back 10, 15 years, cod stocks were a bit under pressure, and we needed to encourage consumers away from cod. So we needed to look at other species, and there is another species that when you test with consumers in blind taste, they like just as much, called Alaskan pollock, right? Not the greatest name for a fish, I must say, and not very well recognized. So it's like, how can we, but much more available and sustainable. So how can we encourage people to buy pollock instead of cod? And what we discovered is actually, what do people buy fish for? Partly it's the nutrition, right? And it's brain food and this whole thing of around omega-3. Well, cod has omega-3, but it's mainly in the liver. Hence you have cod liver oil, right? Whereas in pollock, it's in the flesh. It's like there's double the omega-3 in the flesh. So we, instead of selling them as pollock fish fingers, we sell them as omega-3 fish fingers. So you can still buy your cod, more expensive, but then we also sold alongside that omega-3, really good benefit, especially parents with kids. And now our pollock business is 2.5 times our cod business. So that was a great example of marrying, there was a business problem, sustainability problem, a consumer insight there around, health, and also a great commercial outcome as well for the business, because it was far cheaper and we could make more money from that. So that when you can find those jackpots, I think it can be really powerful.
There were no jokes about Pollock at dinner last night.
Well, there were from you, actually. What it was. But we won't go there.
We had some good strap lines, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Bunch of marketeers, it's a total liability to bring on stage. I was going to think about, I suppose, some of the other constraints or disruptors that you've all had to face. You all operate, actually, in a world of serious constraint. There's tons of things that you can't do. What are some of the things that enable new and different things? You know, what does the role that tech play? How do you move past some of the things that just make it really difficult to reach consumers? Chris, let me come back over to you.
Yeah, so we have a whole host of regulation that we are operating with, and I say with, not against. Some of them are government issues, some of them are industry issues, so we regulate ourselves. The two most obvious thing is that we don't want to target anyone under the age of 18 or 21 in the US, or whatever the age is. And also we don't want to condone abusive or excessive drinking. And that is something that we as an industry, so not just Jägermeister, we as an industry, the responsible producers anyway, have come together and say, okay, this is very strict and we're going to do that. Now for us, obviously, as a brand who has a somewhat more younger audience, it's probably slightly more challenging than a single malt Scotch brand, as you can imagine. That, however, means that certain media types are not open to us. TikTok, I think every session I attended today mentioned AI and TikTok. Mm-hmm. So yes, we do. We work with AI. At TikTok, they don't have an age gate. So on Meta, Instagram, Facebook, you have to enter your age. Same for YouTube. And TikTok, they don't have that. They cannot regulate that. So for us, we say, okay, we don't work in that channel, which again is, a few years ago, it was just a bunch of 13-year-olds. Well, they're all coming into an interesting age bracket right now, 18, 19, 20, and so on and so forth. But unless they establish this mechanism, we won't be able to operate in there. That it's a challenge, but it's a creative challenge. I think you just have to work a little bit harder and find a solution to come around that, work around that. And thankfully, there's plenty of other channels that you can work with. So in that sense, there is. I think it's also a bit for innovation.
Tim, do you think tech is something that can help you meet your consumer in new ways and in more authentic ways? Is it an enabler as much as it is a disruptor?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to sort of make a point on the regulation point, actually, because I think for us, no one wants an unregulated financial services market. Yeah. So we don't see regulation as a bad thing. We see it as a way of keeping our clients safe and keeping us safe and keeping the market safe. So we see regulation as, it's a really important guardrail around our industry. And it's really positive. It's the rules that enable us to be creative. And when it comes to tech, we look at tech in the context of the regulation. Things can't go wrong. You really want to know that your salary is going to be there on payday. You don't want it to have been whisked away by some will-o'-the-wisp avatar somewhere else in the world. So tech for us at times can feel very frustrating because it takes a huge amount of time to onboard and test things. But for sure, we're connecting with people in a different way. And it was interesting, we were talking about TikTok earlier, and the question of, are we on TikTok? How do we use TikTok? And the reality is, everyone's on TikTok because people are putting you on it. So you're not on it because you don't choose to go on it. So we are definitely connecting with people in a completely different way through social media. We get feedback live. We're sort of developing more personalities within the business that feel accessible. And one of the things that Standard Chartered often gets described as is a really accessible bank. So our kind of ultra high net worth clients, our CIB clients, they often reach out directly to our CEO, which is amazing. And it's technology that has made that possible. And sometimes it's a challenge to contain it. But for sure, technology is opening the door, taking away the mystery, and making people feel more connected to what it is that we do.
Steve, would you expand upon that? Before we were lucky enough to work with Steve and Nomad Foods, I think I completely underestimated just how much of an enabler tech is in your industry, actually.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is up and down the value chain. Probably the most. So I'd describe it as an enabling disruptor. If you like.
Okay, great.
I'm combining the two things. So probably the most disruptive thing in the home with consumers is the advent of the air fryer. Anyone here got an air fryer? A few, yeah. Well, when
you're underrepresented.
Yeah, you're very. Yeah,
as an
which
audience.
doesn't surprise me with this audience. Yeah, absolutely. So if we last year when we, found out how many households have air fryers in the UK, it was 25%, 1 in 4 households. We've just checked again recently in the last months, and there's 60% of households claim they use an air fryer. And of those that have an air fryer, nearly 90% are using it weekly. Yeah, so it's not like that waffle maker or juicer that is there for about 3 weeks, and then you put it under the cupboard and it gathers dust. It's something that's come to the heart of the kitchen. And when you look at it, you can understand why. I see it a bit like the electric car versus the traditional car, because if you're, to bring an example, if you wanted to make a cheeky fish finger sandwich late at night, who wants to preheat the oven for 10 minutes? And then you've got to wait in this big vessel, and then to put 5 or 6, depending on how hungry you are, and then wait 20 minutes for them to be cooked. It's just too much of a faff. Whereas an air fryer, you switch it on, 2 minutes it's hot, it's half the time to cook the product, slightly healthier because it blows some of the oil off and all the rest of it. And so you're saving energy bills. We've done blind tests of, how does a fish finger perform out of an oven and air fryer, and they're crispier and tastier. So it's just a bit of a no-brainer, and it's changing people's cooking habits. It's allowing, especially with fragmentation of families, people eating at different times. It's allowing. I feel like I'm doing a selling job for Ninja here, but and actually, those guys have done a great job. The players in that industry, and actually, the lines are blurring. So last week, Iceland, which is one of our big retailers, Ninja are going to launch a frozen food range in Iceland, which is products branded Ninja, designed for the air fryer. So that's quite disruptive. One other very small example I'm going to share, which is in agriculture. I'm only going to share it because I love the name of this technology. There's a new technology, AI technology, that looks at crops, and it combines infrared and cameras and this kind of thing to look at weeds. And it allows farmers to control the weeds versus the real pea plants. And it's called RoboCrop AI. I think that's the best AI tool. So, whether it's in agriculture or in the home, technology is definitely, making things yields more efficient, helping the consumer. It's a real enabler.
And transforming advertising opportunities as we go.
Yes, indeed.
Let's come back to real people for a moment. We were talking about influencer marketing in the wings, and just the anecdote, the Unilever decision to quite considerably scale back traditional advertising to invest times 20 in influencer marketing. And so we're having a little bit of a debate on just how much of a role that should play. Chris, let's come to you on that, because I know you guys do influencer marketing, but a little bit differently.
Yeah, well, we don't have quite the money that Unilever has. Yes. So one thing we do, for example, is, let me start by saying, we are very much about bringing emotions. So spirits or alcohol in itself is a very emotional playing field, and for us in particular, that's particularly relevant. So we invest a lot into giving people experiences that they wouldn't otherwise have. Our aim as a company is to give consumers the best nights of their lives today and tomorrow, which is the sustainability element. So we don't just invest in just being visible as a brand, but also enabling these things to happen. Hence the reference earlier to nightclubs, and we have a Save the Night program around that. So, but it's very much around having this experience. I'm sure we're all familiar with physical and mental availability. I sort of coined a third term, which we call emotional availability. So how can you really get consumers to have this best night of their life? How do you get them to walk away with a big smile on their face and saying, okay, well, this is definitely an experience I will never forget. The one issue is it's very difficult to measure that. I was like to say, the biggest emotion is love, you can't measure that, Today I'm 63.5% in love. I don't think that works like that. But there's, you have to find different points to work around that. Now, so that's sort of at the core. And then we use influencers to sort of amplify that feeling. So one program we have is with students. So we have a student brand ambassador program, which basically, all have a huge social following online at the moment. So they're all micro-influencers or micro-influencers, depending on who we recruit. But it allows them to take their friends onto the journey, how they experience their best nights there. So it is very much a group of creators, but that's not the primary objective. The primary objective is to bring about the sentiment, and to associate the brand with the sentiment that you really have this nucleus of having the best nights of your life. So again, the Unilever decision, I read it and I thought, okay, that's a bold move. I think they said a few other things that were a little bit interesting. I think questioned, the whole brand marketing funnel and brands in itself, which I wouldn't necessarily agree with. I think influencers have a role to play as part of the overall media mix. Personally, let's see. I think we'll be watching from the sidelines and see if, I think if they succeed, then we'll all be doing the same thing in a year's time. And if not, we'll be saying, yeah, told you so.
Excellent. I love 3 smug marketeers on a stage. Talk about, Tim, Steve, any other innovative platforms that you've experimented with in terms of that marketing tech or even just tech-free in real life space. I'm interested in both extremes.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because influencers, I think, is really interesting, and the major part of our business is Asia, Africa, Middle East, and then it's kind of the rest of the world that wants to interact with that part of the world, and celebrity endorsement has always been huge, continues to be huge, and probably the kind of biggest line in the marketing budget. And influencers, it's really just a modern version of that, only higher risk. And I think, if I think back over my career, whenever we've talked about bringing on board a celebrity, the challenge of finding someone that isn't going to do something bad that is then associated with your brand has always been the major reason why you don't go down the celebrity route. It's really hard. There's just a few people out there in the public eye that are safe enough for an organisation like ours to use. And so, for me, influencer just feels like a minefield because often the people that are becoming huge have multiple lives, and let's not go down into kind of mainstreaming OnlyFans and all of that kind of stuff, and how that can be just over the hump of mainstream media as well. So I think we are probably more risk averse than most people in how we think about marketing. But we are doing loads with AI now, and it's quite interesting. I heard AI described earlier today as a trend. It really isn't, and I think that is going to be really transforming kind of the speed with which we can deal with what our clients are trying to achieve in their lives. And so I think some of the most exciting platform work that we're doing is in our service. And our ability to quickly get to the point of delivering against the needs of our clients. Because in our markets, in our business, in our industry, speed is often the thing that gets you ahead and gets you to opportunities that others can't get to before they've got there.
That's fair. We'll come back to the aversion to the word trend later. Yeah. Steve, let me come to you.
Yeah, I think it's a very extreme kind of position that we've heard from Unilever. You don't know how much that will manifest in reality. And, we'd be very big fans of influencers, but only in an and. Yep. The most powerful campaigns compound across channels. And, actually some of the more traditional channels that we used to shun, like out of home, for example, are ones that we're just getting much better returns for now, because actually they're one of the only media that isn't fragmented like TV and social is, where you can guarantee views. And there's very interesting things happening in digital out of home, for example, where you can tailor copy to programmatically to certain moments, like weather related, for Aunt Bessie Yorkshire puddings when it's cold and people want to roast, for example. But I think it's important for brands to experiment and learn and test. So, an area that we've been very active in the last year, we under-index quite a lot with younger consumers, ones that don't have air fryers, like the audience here. There's a bit of a pitch here. So we've been doing a lot in gaming space, actually, because a lot of our brands, Goodfellas Pizza, for example, or Chicken Shop, one of our kind of, having a kind of chicken shop experience at home, is pretty much targeted to the younger consumer. So we've done things like partnerships with EA Sports to have in-game advertising for I'll still call it FIFA, even though it's not FIFA anymore, and partnering with gaming influencers on Twitch, and we sponsor a esports team as well. And this is kind of creating new relationships with consumers. And it's working out pretty well, and that's translating to really good results in store as well. So we've launched this range, and 90% of the sales are incremental, and the people who are buying are the 18 to 30-year-olds new to the category who weren't buying some of those products before. So we can kind of learn our way through and test and learn and experiment.
Well, as you say, the layers run deep, and there are so many of them. With our last couple of minutes, I wanted to finish on that, actually. With all of you, you will have experienced a lifetime of trying to balance out those layers, the constraint of budget. How are you getting that right in the boardroom? There's this constant pressure, maybe we'd say particularly at the moment, given the current economic climate, to get revenue right today, results that are delivering fast, and build long-term brands for the future and long-term relationships with the audiences you're trying to serve. How are you managing to do both of those things? Chris?
Yeah, let me start. So we, as I said, the market is under pressure at the moment. However, we managed to grow a brand, where we track our brand strength, our brand equity, to the highest level it's ever been in the UK last year, which is fantastic. So we said, okay, marketing job, team done. No, it's not, because our sales didn't follow up. So I think a mistake I see many marketers make is they just think, okay, I just need to look at my equity scores and I don't worry about things like revenue and profit. You need to look at profit. That is the lifeblood of the company. And unless your campaign ultimately turns into an actual number that makes the company viable and generates profit, then you haven't done your job. And I think when you have that attitude, then all of a sudden you have a different conversation in the boardroom. Now, we are a very brand-led company, so we have the advantage that I actually sit on the board, which makes the discussion a little bit easier sometimes because I have the influence in the boardroom. But I think that mindset is vital.
I think very little has changed. Every job that I've had over the last embarrassing number of decades has been, I've been brought in because the organisation wants to become more insight-led and more data-driven in its decision-making. That's why I got this job, it's why I got the last job, it's why I got the job before that. It's amazing how we're just inconsistent in our use of insight and data. And actually, it's marketeers, branding people are chronically bad at being accountable for what's going to be delivered. And it normally comes from not spending enough time up front, setting the objectives, bringing people on board, bringing your stakeholders with us. That kind of painful process, because you kind of want to get to the fun bit. But I'm having the same conversation. The destination's the same, the mode of transport is different. It's kind of like everything's changed, nothing's changed.
That's fair. Steve?
I think the key thing for marketeers in these constrained times is just to take a full, what we would call flywheel view to understanding the brand. So just remembering that the comms and the advertising and the media is just one small bit of investment when you consider all of the other things that lead to brand growth and product growth. So, the retailer, distribution, your position on shelf, the promotions you run, and the delivery of the product, the superiority. People pay a big premium for your brand versus a private label. It's very easy to switch. So is your product consistently superior? So it's to your building on your point, it's more forensics, it's more pressure, and getting more from the limited constrained resources, making harder choices as well.
We are out of time. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to our three speakers. I'm somewhat relieved that we didn't need to turn to the shots, although a little disappointed too, if I'm honest.
It's not too late.
It's not too late. We're going to get kicked off. But thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.